Noshkree sat several wagons back, the arachnid beneath his tools, the eerie owl of fluid metal rattling about in a box in the bed beside Ty, the frog's driver, who had staunchly refused to leave Arek's side. The caravan meandered onward, stretching 20 in length and 2 in width, with sleds hauled by caribou and carts drawn by horses. This was in the scryer's pack. Gregor lofted a leather-bound tome across the berth to the enigmatic Sophie. Next to her, Reyth watched as the unadorned eggshell faces of the pages, each empty as Sophie's growing disappointment, as she leafed through the gild-leafed pages to find them all the same. An owl, embossed upon the calfskin cover, held a watchful eye. The gaunt maiden blanched, as slender as a sapling and now sickly as an aspen. With a resounding clap, she closed the wheeled book. I don't need this. Relax, Gregor said. From one branded soul to another, your secret is safe with me. He took the rein with one hand and shed the glove of the other. His palms, paler than the rest of him, slashed by 3 bisecting silver burns, in likeness to the emblem upon his chain. Sophie tucked her chestnut braid behind her ear, veiling her countenance, but exposing the scorched plateaus that marred her own palms, albeit with less severity than Gregor's. They don't, Sophie answered. My mother was a choir girl, perished beneath her vow of silence, Gregor mused. She'd rejoiced to hear I overcame the parish song and earned my parishioning. The silent years are the harshest. Indeed, yes, sir, Sophie muttered, hiding the gift under her arm. Anyway, yes. Sophie cleared her throat and nudged the arrangement of cloth scenes she'd displayed. As I was saying, Reyth, these are called photographs. No, what is this? Reyth snatched the tome from the timid girl's grasp. Sophie cawed and clawed for it back, but a bump sent her reeling. Reyth skimmed the empty pages only to then toss it back. It's just, well, a tip-top hobby, like stamp collecting, Sophie elucidated. I like to read. What is read? Reyth inquired. What is a Veldbook? You don't know how to read? Sophie asked. The mouse's squeaking squeal elicited Reyth's ire, and she feigned to strike the stammering mouse. She went to recoil, but Reyth intervened, pinning her arms back by each wrist and baring her teeth. Teach me, will you please? Reyth sang. Confuddled, Sophie couldn't stop Reyth as she vaulted to the front of the wagon with a stolen handful of photos. Flipping through them, she came upon the 4-legged metallic behemoth looming over a blazing quatan, its iron frame the perch for several owl-like beings, their visages distorted by the photograph's peculiar effect. There's a bit to that one, Gregor said. Which bit in particular? All of it, Reyth cheered. All of it, Sophie echoed as she regained her wits. Gregor tapped the monstrous idol's single eye, like a jewel where a spider's mandibled grin lapsed. This contraption appears to be a formidable construct, designed to seize and secure territory. In function, it is like a vehicle. Should you encounter one, I advise a hasty retreat. Gregor gestured to each of the luminous avians before directing the attention back to the similar device in Noshkree's care. Though Reyth couldn't see her uncle, she could discern the elongated tube extending from his wrist to a transparent water skin swollen with a yellowish liquid. The bag fastened to an aspen branch using a fishing line, replaced occasionally by the curative frogfolk. These are the ever-watchful watchers, Gregor said. They serve the professors and their servants, scouts for their malicious aims. You met one of the scryers earlier, likely under the umbrella of Saren's secret police. They're responsible for sweeping up the aftermath of violence, like wrought upon Quatan by the pyromancer. Gregor paused, to turn back to Sophie. This is an incredible capture. How on Thess did you manage it? Reyth interrupted Sophie's shy sputtering by waving more pictures and beating the wooden seat. Gregor sighed and selected another image from the assortment, one of several dark ones carved in black and beetle-helmed. These are deep infiltration voltigeurs, accompanied by mounted dragoon auxiliaries, professionals and conscripts alike. Observe their attire, their imposing demeanor. their uniforms designed to evoke terror. They stage these acts of violence to project an image of power, like a second skin for the state, well kept and pressed. These serviles serve the Savant under the command of Dread King Mordegon, who himself is a servant of the Starlight Council and a member of their elite magocracy. You mentioned the Starlight before, but said they were naw Starlight, so I do not understand, Reyth said, puzzled. I'm not the one to ask. Their nature is beyond me. However, with a sleight of hand, Gregor exchanged one image for another, one Reyth had not seen before. Outside Quatan, before its destruction, near the dry gullies where Quats once drove the forevergreens downriver to fashion into sleds, frames, and totems, the green-eyed devil crouched over a lifeless man, another shadowy servile in dark garb. Devoid of the telltale light between his green eyes and the fiery backdrop of angry flames, the devil's youth stood tall as the childish face of the scryer. Gregor had lured to their death. The slain figure's dark hair lay in a matted heap beside his abandoned corpse. Reyth couldn't but wonder, if the image had been captured from Sophie's perspective, how had she taken a photo so close to the Dark One's? Reyth supposed Gregor had been right to ask just that. She'd let her curiosity get in the way of real insight. But who was the scalped man whom the green-eyed devil regarded with such sorrow? It wasn't the Twish way to scalp skulls, but there was one woman Reyth knew who had taken a liking to inflicting such pain on others, Boda. The fierce woman's fruity eyes already watching her from the wagon behind Noshkre's, huddled with 7 other warriors whose turn it was to rest instead of scout and patrol. They met like sparking flint, and although Reyth would have once looked away, like a cat rebuked by its bigger better, now she wanted Boda to know that she knew. But Boda's temperament had veered since Reyth had struck the scryer low. She didn't smile. She never smiled. But Boda had been watching her with unusual attention. Against that, Reyth didn't want to chafe, and just let Gregor go on about whatever he wanted to say about the photo.
To elaborate, Gregor went on, this is a magister, particularly a pyromancer, from the sorcerer city of Reims, or its metropole, in Sarah, judging by his patches. I will not share much of the heresy known as wielding, but the power contracts from Myric beings like an Ended, an Ugullan devil, Gregor pointed to EU's long wail, or another wielder of great power, like a fairy or a catastrophe. It is the adversary's gift. Know this, you can spot a wielder who is wielding in 2 ways. Their inner sight shines, manifesting within or between the eyes, and mirrored of the same hue will glow at their fingertips. Again, there are many variations, as for instance the Endless or the Worms can wield without gesture as it is innate to them, unlike humanity. And how do you kill one? Reyth asked, letting go of Boda's attention, to reflect upon the photo more, to try and learn something about its subject, though he had little to tell. Unlike Sophie, whose insistent fidgeting gave away clear unease about the subject. You know one way, Gregor said. Also, stress can cause a wield to fail or blow back. Put them off balance if you must fight them, as it is unlikely that you will be able to escape. They are the source of their own power, so if they cannot find you, cannot reach you, they cannot harm you. Avoiding them is best. Gestalt is a purpose-tuned tool to countering them. Ah, and that is why Miss Vakda must come here and not I there, the frog croaked from the wagon behind them. It is time to see now, Noshkre said, raising the box of tools and loose parts. Gregor gave Reyth a nod of approval that she hadn't sought. She huffed and gained her footing, climbing through the bed, past Sophie, who swiped for her photographs and failed, then in 2 steps charged and leapt. Sight left her like lost breath mid-air, and she grounded, groin first, upon a horse. The bridled beast reeled, but Ty must have learned the tricks of the creatures, for it calmed like the water when he cracked the reins. "Be being careful now, Rey," Ty began. "You may be blind as the bat, but you've gnaw her flights." Collecting herself from the plunge, She used the strength of her thighs and footholds upon the hitches to squeeze the horse's bare back and stand steady against the bob. She swung one leg from beneath her, and before Ty could argue, leapt with faith towards Noshkree. Reyth hit an arm, hard and strong as an outstretched branch, as Ty caught her by the belly. Too heavy to hold, he swung her, using her speed, to curve her arc and slam her, back first into the piled bolts of cloth overflowing the wagon's bed. "You dumb as a gourd of beads, Reyth." She laughed off Ty's scolding as she caught her breath and cheered. She may have missed her second leap, but she'd found her landing while inspiring hoots from as far up as O and Kamut. Noshkree had her pull back her hair, and she felt the cold appendages slip forward from the back of her neck. Each leg clicked into place, so the gem that comprised the amulet's core rested against her spine. Each leg actuated, then snapped tight enough to close her throat. Unable to speak, to cry out, she hit the frog's thick leg, padded with scales like leather armor, and Noshkree ratcheted the legs until she could breathe again. Still, she didn't like how firm it held as he fastened the final connections. Needle bites across her head as the spider spun its web, threading beneath her hair. Color filled her, but not from behind her eyes, from elsewhere, among bits and bobs, metal down and actuating gyros. Unlike when she saw again for the first time, her eyes were raw, but neither stung nor bled. She felt them move to scan her new surroundings. Mind-bogglingly, although she looked, her sight stood still. Disorientation crashed over her like a wave, and she staunched the surge rushing to the surface. The vomit tasted of broth and roots, and though she'd stopped the flow, the churn did not abate. Nauseating. Prismatic motes flickered across her vision as the Watcher's artifice body took shape and lifted its head upon a pillar of adjoining feathers and false life, building itself to look upon her. Her upon bolts of purple-patterned cloth. Fat blue plums glazed in dry blood grew between her cheeks and eyes. Eyes stained the same waxed yellow as the wisps that floated in the place of her origin. Those wisps lay between her now, between old and new. The confusing congruence of perceptions left her waiting in her own connected gaze. The rest of her seemed too much to bear. Reyth thought she looked like a quat corpse, a feral find, risen from a fiery grave. Stained with ash, her deerskins dried and split. Her bow and lips had cracked under the intense heat of prior days. Reyth couldn't tell how long she'd hypnotized herself, but Noshkree moved on to refresh the piss-yellow fluid flowing into her uncle. Worse for wear than she, Arek, lay flat at the wagon's far end, tucked like a baby into the bolts, gowned in a fraying robe. Thin, white, hair haloed deep cheeks and swollen, pudgy flesh. When had he grown so old, so weak and sick? Again she found herself back at the Agla. Arek had his sister's nose, pointed chin, and long face. Evren's long face. A curse hung upon her family. Seeing herself so well, all things considered, made her messy ugliness easier to stomach. "Are you listening to me?" Noshkree said. Reyth saw herself snap towards the sound. Dizziness shut her up. Falling forward flailed her senses as she watched, felt herself hit the deck. The anima stayed fixed like a totem. Its wings wide, she could see their tips. Ty helped her back into her seat, and Noshkree returned to inspect her. "Are you sure this is a good wonderin' you had, lizard?" Ty asked. "Wasn't my idea," Noshkree answered. "I'm fine," Reyth said, fumbling in the cloth anything but together. "Stubborn," Ty relented, climbing back into the drive. "You get that from your pap." "Noshkree," Gregor called back from the wagon ahead. "You should tell her about the bomb affixed to her brainstem. Do your doctor's diligence, eh?" "I was getting to that." Noshkree's long tongue lolled from between monstrous teeth. Odd to smell his briny breath in the direction opposite from where she felt she should be. The skewed, broadened sense of place would take getting used to. It will be like learning to walk, at first. Your brain struggles with this new extended experience. It would be better if you had been a wielder, but... He rang his ring-laden claws, a glittering spread of jewels and moss rock.
as for the jewel-craft bomb upon your neck. The far form, writing unseen by the meek and unread all the same by the illiterate, inscribes new properties to material, stone to water, water to stone. Far form holds its shape better than most Myric supergeometric impositions, but is still energy-dense. Though reinforced, they can go catastrophic under strain, similar to a wielder in fact. Same properties, so don't let it get damaged, or else... Pop! Noshkri pantomimed the blooming of a flower, then elected a more visual demonstration, chomping into a melon from Schneider's stock and spraying her, and the textiles with sweet, sappy juices. These can be tempting luxuries. Gregor added, that can either improve one's well-being or alter physical laws. They are powerful tools and weapons not to be abused. What she understood of this warning made the legs feel tighter against her throat, their glassy fingers pinching at her skin. The gem sat heavy on her spine, but was cold and electric against her fingertips. However spooky it felt, it had the beauty of the Malva's own moss ornaments. She hoped the first of many. Listen not to this Philistine mason, Noshkri joked. Embrace it. As well, listen close. Use your ears, too. The mithrite is a natural conduit for Myric energy. If it begins to chime, prime time. It will explode if it exceeds its capacity for raw magic. I cannot move it, Reyth said, tilting her head side to side, up and down to tempt the fixture to life. It will take time. Yes, carry it for now, like a second head, Noshkri admitted. Like a new muscle, it will take work. In time you will see freer than before. The Watcher will grow an extension of your body. Use it to keep your frail self safe and hide it to conceal your disability from your enemies. Be careful. Be mindful. He tapped her head with a claw heavy as brick. It's a brittle one, and cannot hide into its usual illusions.